did her post-secondary education and carried on all the way up to her doctoral work, and is now working with new Canadians every single day in the Peterborough area, but part of a very broad network who is welcoming newcomers and helping them start a new chapter in their lives in what we think is a great nation who is always trying to be better. Progress does have its problems, but we're working very hard to be a multicultural democracy and embrace all worldviews. And Yvonne can tell us a little bit more about that today, and about her experiences and what a day in the life is like in serving new Canadians and helping them on their new journey. I'm going to hand it over to you right now, Yvonne, and welcome you, and thank you very, very much for being with us here tonight.
Thank you so much, Peggy. I really appreciate the invitation from the Ontario Home Economics Association for this invitation to share my thoughts about reframing diversity and renewing community. Just before we start, I would like to acknowledge the land that we live on, that I live, work, and play in the city of Peterborough, which is located in Nogojiwanong on Treaty 20 Mississauga territory, and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaties First Nations. So I am a first-generation immigrant from the island country of Singapore, located in Southeast Asia. It's 1 degree north of the equator, and often known as the little red dot, because that's all you see of us on a world map. We're very, very small landmass. So coming to Canada from a country that's that small, I've really grown in my appreciation of the land that we live on, the gifts that we're afforded from living on it, and how much of it is in peril. So I am grateful to the First Nations in Canada for their teachings about the land, so that generations ahead of us can continue to thrive. And I do challenge myself to be part of the efforts to steward it. So as Peggy mentioned, I do work at the New Canadian Centre in Peterborough, where our team works really together to help those who are new to Canada settle in and make a home. And we also work with partners in the community towards building a welcoming community. So today's topic on reframing diversity and renewing community is actually really meaningful for us, because those are the roots of the New Canadian Centre. So we began life as an organization 40 years ago, when a group of volunteers came together to privately sponsor refugees who were fleeing from, at that time, the communist regime in Vietnam. And they decided after that that this work was important enough to be a permanent part of our community, and decided to then establish the New Canadian Centre. So we grew from a staff of 1. Today we have a staff of 27 that is working in various parts of our community. I really took to heart this topic of reframing diversity and renewing community. And I reflected on how really diversity is a fact, and diversity really encompasses all the different characteristics that make us different from each other, whether it's by age, whether it's ethnicity, religion, worldview, food preferences. We're all different in that way. So the difference that's reflected in our community in Peterborough, so it's about 85,000 people here. We serve in 2019-2020 newcomers from 100 countries, and the largest groups came from Syria, India, the Philippines, and China. So the large group from Syria really came from us being established as a welcome center for government-assisted refugees back in 2015. So there was a big group that came as refugees back 5 years ago. So in that year, from 100 countries, there were 70 different first languages spoken. So I did a little chart of how many there were, and it was Arabic being the most common one, and English was the second most common first language, and then Spanish, Tagalog, and Farsi as the other most common first languages spoken. We've been doing a lot of reflection on our work at the New Canadian Centre, especially in the light of what happened in the summer. And this quote really has been guiding, I think, a lot of our thinking and the way that we practice our work. It is attributed to Arthur Chan, who is a behavioral scientist. And he says that diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome. So I think what what we do in terms of looking at diversity is to want to go beyond inviting, if you want to think about it, different people to the party. We want to ask people to dance with us at the party, and we also want to create a space where they feel comfortable in dancing, to feel comfortable to choose the different songs on the playlist and ask anyone to dance with them. So I'll come back to this party metaphor, I think, throughout the presentation. So we talked about diversity, and let's start looking at equity, which we can think about as a choice that we are consciously making. So if equity is a choice, what can we do to really eliminate and identify unfair biases, stereotypes, or barriers that may limit someone's full participation? So the question I would ask is, can everyone dance? So if I look back at our work, for many newcomers, they can't all dance because English is not their first language. They can't all participate. English is not their first language, and for some of them, it's not even their second language. And yet we know how important strong language skills are to integrating into a new life here in Canada. So at the New Canadian Centre, what we do is we offer several different ways in which newcomers can work on language skills. There are government sponsored programs through the LINK program and the ESL program, but informally, we offer conversation groups that are facilitated by volunteers 3 times a week. Yes, so I don't have a PowerPoint with my presentation. I see a comment from Jean. So I don't know if you want to maybe not screen share, then you can see my face on your screen. It's up to you. Yeah, whichever works that way. So hopefully I'll be captivating enough to hold your attention through this presentation. So I was talking about conversation groups in the past. 3 times a week we have them, and they're mostly facilitated by retired ESL teachers. So pre-COVID, they were all in person, but now they're all online, where you can log in via Zoom, meet with others, and work with instructors in a group. We also have a 1-to-1 tutor match where, again, volunteer tutors meet for 1 to 2 hours a week to teach a newcomer English. So pre-COVID, again, they would meet at the library, they might meet at a Tim Hortons, but now they have met in the backyard in the summer, and then a lot of it's happening online as well. So we talk about COVID, this 1-year anniversary of how our lives changed so dramatically a year ago. When we shut down for in-person service. So our offices are still shut and we're still delivering services online. A lot of things jumped online, not just us. So we started a web chat function on our website where you could have a live chat with someone during office hours. We dropped off activity packages for our clients, craft packages, ingredients, things that they could do online via Zoom, and really develop that capacity to host workshops, just like this conference has transitioned to online. And we really saw how that impacted our clients, both in a negative and a positive way. So on one hand, those who were not able to make it to workshops or to groups in the past, because they might have needed transportation or childminding, or they couldn't integrate it into their work schedules, now are able to work this into their daily life. You just have to have a device where you can log online and you can participate. But at the same time, the reliance of having a device like a laptop or a tablet for learning meant that others were being excluded. If you didn't have reliable internet access, didn't have a smartphone, didn't have a device that you could get online, the world was suddenly closed to you. So this kind of inequity with regards to digital access or even digital literacy, how to use a computer, was something that we recognized really quickly. And our staff spent a lot of time helping children and youth navigate around logging online for school. And we also worked on how-to tutorials for getting our clients onto Zoom. In the fall, we started working with adult English learners on computer basics, and we were able to get a grant to help them keep the computers that they learned on. So this really helped with people who were having difficulty purchasing a device to be able to get online. And then last summer, in this kind of extra work, other work that was related to equity and identifying barriers, we also started a program called Family Literacy in Peterborough, the FLIP program. where we identified newcomer families that were facing a lot of barriers, which included literacy and isolation. So these families typically had many children who were school age at home. And the goal was really to keep them from, I think you call it here, the summer slide, where if you're not in school in the summer, that there may be some effect on their learning. So with this program, a staff person visited with each family once a week and engaged them either online or in their backyard with songs and activities to keep up with learning over the summer. And so we found then that even parents who were learning ESL, who were out of school, were really benefiting from this program by learning alongside their kids. So if we come back to that quote, we've covered a little bit of the discussion on diversity as a fact and equity as a choice. Inclusion is the action. So what are some of the actions that you can create, you can take to create a welcoming environment where, again, if you're at a party, everyone feels that they can dance. So my colleagues and I have been, really guided by this. And I'd like to give you a few examples of the things that we're doing with regards to inclusion. So we have established a newcomer girls group. This is a partnership with Peterborough Youth Services, where we have a settlement worker who's usually working in schools, working with them as a newcomer youth support worker to develop capacity to support newcomers with youth mental health. My kids are at home, so please excuse that. So this is also where we kind of position newcomers, not as just people who need things all the time. Newcomers are also bringing skills and gifts. They are decision makers and they can be leaders in our community. And so how can we create that environment really where they can flourish and prosper? So it talks about the girls group. Then we also have a really very active women's group. It's facilitated by two newcomers who were actually participants of the group in the past, who really had a lot of benefit in learning about how to create this environment where women feel inspired and safe to share, their vulnerabilities. So this group has been doing lots of fun things every week. They've been baking Welsh cakes, they've been painting. This is a quote that I got from one of the participants in the group, and she says, "For me, being part of the women's group in the last year has been a great way to keep connected with friends and meet new members from all over the world. It is a nice space to share and learn from each other's talents. It's a unique space where we can feel at home and as part of a big family." And that's really reassuring to hear, and really a good indication that we're moving towards the right direction in terms of the environment that we're creating to be welcoming and supportive. We're also taking this opportunity while we're all online to run a pilot newcomer leadership group. So we're developing capacity for newcomers to really participate in spaces where decisions are being made. So to learn about leadership, to learn about governance, to being on a board, how to read financial statements, and also doing public speaking training with Toastmasters so that they're comfortable participating. Being inclusive is also about creating spaces where people feel welcome to share their culture. So I invite all of you to come to Peterborough when things open up again to participate in Multicultural Canada Day, which is a huge outdoor event at Delcrary Park where we have over 13,000 people come. And there's newcomer food and craft vendors, and there's performances. It's a great day outside in a beautiful setting. This year, well, last year, the entire day had to go online. But the theme that we had for the day was Peterborough is my home. So we shared cultural performances on social media. We distributed craft kits to families where they could make a little paper home. We had decorated 6 cars called the Maple Mobiles and drove around Peterborough neighborhoods honking our horns. And if you took a picture of it, you could enter a draw and win a prize. So something that everybody really could participate in. And we did the same thing by creating spaces for people to share their culture at our winter potluck party. So that also went online. I wanted to share with you a little program that we've been doing called the Welcome Pass. Pre-COVID, this would have been a little booklet where you would get free or discounted admission to various cultural sites in town. And COVID times, it's called Welcome Inside. So it's a series that we've been running with the Quaker Oats Factory, with the Canadian Canoe Museum, with a local restaurant called Hanoi House, where it's essentially a behind the scenes look at what happens in these places. So we've integrated that learning together with our English conversation groups. There's two pillars that we like to talk about when we talk about inclusion, which is social inclusion. I've shared lots of examples about that. But there's also economic success, and many indicators, as you've seen probably in the media, have revealed that women and newcomers have really disproportionately borne the impact of the pandemic because of the traditional roles in childminding, and also because many are engaged in various forms of precarious employment. 3 years ago, through the support of a grant, we started a project called the Sewing Collective, where we trained newcomer women in sewing skills. So the gap was where we saw women who were eager to participate in some way, but who really needed the flexibility to work from home or to have some form of employment where they could tailor it to whatever time that they had, but gave them some empowerment to support their families. So through this grant, what we did was we bought 8 of the same sewing machines, set up a little sewing lab in one of the rooms, and then created a series of training courses, so basic sewing and then alterations. Then they also learned about how they could, I guess, upmarket their creations by doing screen printing. And then the final stage that we ended up with in January of last year was entrepreneurship. So they learned about how they could take the skills that they learned and make a business that could work for them. So when the early call came for creating PPE and masks, a lot of the participants in this group really felt that they could jump in and say, we want to give back by helping to sew these cloth masks, and volunteer to help. So through a partnership with Matter House Textile Studio here in Peterborough, 8 of these participants have now actually formed what they're calling themselves the Newcomer Sewing Crew. And it's working as a collective for small-scale manufacturing projects. So, you know, we talked about diversity, equity, inclusion as the action, and belonging. Last stage here is belonging is the outcome, right? So we want everybody to belong. We want to have the feeling where you're right where you need to be, where you don't really have to be invited to dance. You can get up and dance. You can choose who you want to dance with, and you have just as much input in the playlist as anyone else. You're accepted for who you are, and you're expected to be who you are. And then all the building blocks kind of lead up to that point, and it's a constant building process, this feeling of belonging. I'll put our website in the chat after I finish here for the New Canadian Centre. And I really invite you, if you have time, to listen to our Living Library podcast, where you can meet through their stories, newcomers, and hear their stories of how they have felt connected in Peterborough, and they feel supported, and how they're able to help others. If you're interested, we've also started a partnership for this project called Stories for Hope, Healing and Belonging. It takes place on Facebook every 2 weeks, where we're a few agencies are actually looking through children's books. So we're reading the children's books and learning about how to start conversations about inclusion with children and youth. So looking ahead for our work, I think many agencies are feeling the same thing at this stage of the pandemic. The biggest challenge that we're facing really is mental health. People who have been bearing the burden of their own anxieties are now really feeling the weight of it, and also really worried about families that they have left overseas. So it's one thing to be separated from your loved one by province or city, but when air travel is uncertain and different governments have different ways to get things under control, it's really, really quite worrisome. In terms of employment, we're hearing more from international students who are really temporary residents of Canada. They were not eligible for CERB. So many have had to work retail and delivery jobs in order to keep up with their expenses here in Canada, and many of them in high-risk employment. We're also thinking about migrant farm workers. So some of you here on the call may be from communities who have very large groups of migrant farm workers that support your local economy. It's fairly small here, but we do know that of the small group that we're in contact with here in Peterborough, that they do rely very heavily on migrant workers for their operations. One farmer that we spoke to really said, you know, the 5 people that I bring in from Mexico means that I can hire 30 other local workers around my farm for various other positions. So what we want to do at the New Canadian Centre is to support farmers with quarantine activities. So the 2 weeks while workers are to be quarantined, to help share information in their languages, and also to prepare and deliver care packages that will help the workers feel supported while they're separated and worried about their own families. So really, this is the last part of my presentation here, and I like to leave you with some food for thought and a really small call to action. Some reflections. What is your story? What is your story, or what is your family's story of settling in Canada if you have come from away? What is the story that you want to pass on to the next generation? And what role can you play really in sharing the stories of those who are looking to build a new life in Canada? One of the biggest roles that anyone can play is to help a newcomer to Canada is really to be a bridge, to make a warm introduction for friendship, for employment, or really just to say hello. I'll invite you to think about how you can help to be a bridge, to help newcomers really establish those strong social connections that will help them thrive and really be part of a larger community ecosystem. Maybe the first step you want to think about is which are the organizations in your community that work with people who are new to Canada, that work with international students or farm workers. So there are many settlement agencies like ours here at the New Canadian Centre that are funded by the federal government and donations in United Way. Maybe you want to find out what is the one that's closest to you. So since we're all at a conference and really here at a virtual party, I want to come back to my party metaphor that I started with at the beginning. So, you know, we talked about how to really have people feel welcome at the party. So I'd like to invite you to start looking at the tables that you are sitting at with the different groups and spheres of influence in your life. Is your table round so that everyone really has a fair chance of seeing each other? Are there people who are not at the table, and why? And how can you be invite other people to be at the table and to be inviting? So that's all I have tonight for you. I hope that gives you a little glimpse into the world of people who are working to support newcomers here in Canada. And I really look forward to any opportunities for partnership. And again, thank you very much for the invitation.
Thank you so very, very, very much, Yvonne. There's just so many takeaways from what you shared with us. And I loved that you gave us a window across the human life cycle, what's happening for kids in the summer, what's going on for people who need work, what's happening for broader families, and how they're staying connected to their generations that so many of them left behind. So that was a beautiful evolution of thought. And I also love the imagery of the dance and having everyone at the party and leaving us ways that we can actually do something. So I'm really looking forward to your link about the Living Library. And I will definitely look at that and share it also with my students. And so important in terms of the renewing community, even after tonight, what we can do. And communication was such a big part of what you talked about. How do we find a way to make that connection from one human being to another, even if there's a language barrier or some other challenge that's getting in the way? And a smile is universal. So I think that if we can smile and remember to do that, and also to check our assumptions that people may be new to Canada and there may be a language barrier, but many of them are from professions, may have PhDs, are physicians, and due to very unfortunate circumstances find themselves now in a situation where they may be, as you say, working in some of the high-risk positions in food service delivery or challenging areas. And so to really not make assumptions and really seek to build that community, seek to understand and try to listen and learn. As you were speaking, my heart swelled with joy at all the things that are available to everyone in Peterborough and hopefully across Canada in similar programs. And I hope everyone on the call tonight really has discovered in Yvonne's presentation a few things they can do to reach out and start to build those bridges, as you say, across the human family, wherever our origin. 100 different languages, that's in many ways fantastic, because it's representative of all the richness and diversity we have in Canada, but also with a little bit of reticence in that many times people left due to very challenging circumstances. So to continue to renew that community by seeking it out as opposed to waiting for it to come to you. And thank you so very, very, very much, Yvonne, for all of your richness and what you brought to us this evening, including the Indigenous land rights acknowledgement. That's another part of our human family we always want included. Thank you very, very much. And a lucky group later will have Yvonne in their networking session. We'll have Rosie, Yvonne, and Carolina in each of them. So lots of time to ask Yvonne questions there. I'm not going to share my screen now because I would only be showing Rosie's picture, and Rosie has her own slides. So I'm going to transition from Yvonne to Rosie. And Rosie joins us as a registered dietitian. She did her undergraduate degree in nutrition at Western University and now holds a very prestigious master's degree from University of Toronto in public health. I know how difficult it is to get into that program because so many people want to go to it. There's a wealth of incredible scholars and fantastic student body, and Rosie is one of them. She's got a lot of exciting things coming up in her future representing the profession and advocating not just for food justice, but a broader diversity and inclusion, and in her role. And so I transition us all now to Rosie Mensah. And thank you, Rosie, very much for joining us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much for that warm introduction. I'm really glad to be here with you all today. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And I'm looking forward to actually talking about some of what Yvonne already brought up, so even furthering that conversation as well. So I'm just going to go ahead. Okay, are you able to see the slides?
Yes, thank you. We can see them.
Okay, do you just see the slides, or do you see notes as well?
We do not see notes. We see the slide, and then we have a picture of you, the video of you.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you all. So I'm looking forward to talking about reframing diversity and building community, and really looking at how can we collectively work towards diversity and justice. And really today I'll be speaking about food justice and my role as a dietitian and health professional in food justice work. Okay. So I'll just briefly introduce myself. So my name is Rosie, like I mentioned. I'm a registered dietitian and I hold a Master of Public Health. And I'm also a food justice activist. And I'll go into more of what that is later on. But really, I'm really proud of the work around advocacy and social justice I've been able to do as a health provider. I'm also a member of the Food Share Toronto Board of Directors, which is a Toronto-based food justice organization. I most recently was appointed to the Canadian Food Policy Advisory Council. So that's really humbling to be able to, be on an advisory council at the federal level. In the past, I was a member of the Toronto Youth Food Policy Council, and I've done a lot of advocacy work in my home community of Jane and Finch in Toronto, where I was a member of the Black Creek Food Justice Network. Most recently, as you can tell, I'm really passionate about food and food justice. And most recently, I helped co-found a group called Dietitians for Food Justice. And during the summer, when everything was happening around racial injustice, I decided to provide a resource and create an opportunity for other dietitians and nutrition professionals to learn more about our role in equity work. So I founded the CDER course, and I'll get more into that later as well. So as we talk about diversity, I really wanted to share this to say that diversity should be the foundation of your work, not a nice add-on to your work. And really what I mean by that is that for a very long time, I personally felt that diversity was just something that we saw as a checkbox. Do we have this person represented here just for optics? And often that's what it is. And really, for us to have meaningful change and actually reframe the way diversity is positioned, it should really be the foundation of our work to ensure that representation is there and in a meaningful way. I think that's really what I want to drive home here, is the intention behind the work that you're doing and making it meaningful. So when I think about reframing diversity, I really think about representation. So what I mean by representation is in terms of what I will focus on today is mainly around ethno and racial diversity in terms of having representation. So having people who look like what Canadians look like or the world look like as dietitians and other health and nutrition professionals, because often that's not what we see. So a little bit about my experience. I ended up becoming a registered dietitian because I experienced food insecurity firsthand, and also because I didn't grow up seeing any Black healthcare providers. And I really wanted to change that because I quickly realized how a poor access to food resulted in poor health outcomes. And I wanted to do something about it. But I was very intimidated going into spaces where I felt alone and isolated. So just having representation and being able to see yourself is a way that I think we need to shift. So I started my journey to become a dietitian almost 10 years ago, and yet I don't see that much of a change. So it's really important for us to continue to push and have conversations like this and be in spaces like this to have open and maybe sometimes uncomfortable conversations, because this is how we actually make change. Next, I want to talk about leadership. So in order for things to get done, you have to have people in positions of power that actually have different perspectives. So thinking about going back to my example of when I first entered dietetics to become a dietitian, perhaps if there was someone maybe with my lived experience or my background or something even similar, there could be different strategies when we're thinking about recruitment or different conversations that we're having. So even putting people in positions of leadership with different perspectives, different life experiences, but all working towards the same shared goal. So that's another piece that I really think is important when we're thinking about diversity. And I kind of touched on this piece already when we talk about lived experience and really valuing the life experience that we all hold. I think it was great that Yvonne brought up newcomers and how a lot of them come here really knowledgeable. They have so much experience from their home country, and yet they struggle to find jobs because of like language barriers. So even honoring the lived experiences that people have and utilizing their skill set in order for more diversity. So I really think that is how we reframe diversity and move towards equity and inclusion. And lastly, I have here conversations. And really what I mean by that is really talking about different things. Sometimes we can have the same conversations over and over again, with the same perspectives and not actually inviting other people or other perspectives in those conversations. And that's how we maintain the status quo. And really, if we want to have change, we're going to have different conversations that sometimes might make you feel uncomfortable or out of place, but that's an opportunity for growth. So these are really things that we can apply right now and we can do to reframe what diversity is and to make our work more intentional. Next, I want to talk a little bit more about building community and what that means to me. Going back to the first example of why I became a dietitian was really because of my community. I still feel this way to this day, so connected to my community. My community is mainly racialized people, many immigrants and newcomers, many people living with low incomes. And yet I always felt such a strong sense of community and pride there. But I noticed quickly from a young age that we faced a lot of stigma, stereotyping, poor health, lack of resources, and yet people would continue to make the most with what they had. And that, I believe that was a strong part of me being able to develop a strong sense of community, and why I wanted to become a dietitian, and specifically why I wanted to work in the community. So I've been able to use those experiences in my work now as a dietitian, and actually take a lot of what I've learned from the community in terms of my work in food justice and food advocacy online. And why I have this phone here is really because I used my life experiences and my work with regards to food justice, public health, and advocacy to create and cultivate a community online with shared interest. And what I'm most proud of is that we're finally having these conversations to explore food, health, and social justice, and people are seeking out resources and ways to make change. And then I also have here three other groups that I've really been a big part in terms of building community. So as I mentioned, Food Share Toronto, which is a food justice organization in Toronto, and really doing the work to engage communities and not just to provide things like emergency food. So we're really looking at empowering people to be able to have agency and choice when it comes to food and food access. And also the Black Creek Food Justice Network. So this is a local community group in Toronto. And we also do a lot of advocacy around food and food justice. And I'll go into a bit more about maybe you haven't actually heard of food justice, and I'll do a little bit more of that explanation. But really what I'm trying to emphasize here is a lot of these organizations are we're local to my community. And sort of like what Yvonne was talking about, go out and see what's happening in your communities, because there is a lot of work happening there. And it's an opportunity for you to build community, diversify your sources of information, and really reframe diversity. Okay, so I spoke a little bit about diversity and my work, and I touched on food justice. But for those that are unfamiliar with what food justice is, I want to speak briefly about it so you can have a better understanding. So food justice really goes beyond just food insecurity, and it really looks at the systems of oppression that exist within the food system. So food justice goes beyond providing emergency food, but it really looks and explores why people don't have food to begin with. And food justice looks at the root causes of inaccessibility to good quality, culturally appropriate, and nutritious food. And when we talk about food justice, we acknowledge that food is a human right and that everyone should be able to realize their right to healthy food. So going back to when I first spoke about why I became a dietitian, I didn't understand why community members had all these poor health outcomes. Initially, I thought it was that, people didn't know how to eat healthy. I really believe that. And this is sort of what you're taught to think in a way. But with my work in the community and actually engaging in critical self-reflection and diversifying my sources of information, I learned more about the systemic and structural factors that contribute to inaccessibility. And really that became my work in food justice. So instead of focusing solely on food security and providing emergency food, I really want us to move in a direction where we're looking at the root causes that contribute to food insecurity so that we can actually dismantle oppressive systems so that everyone can have access to food and have choice as well. I hope everyone's following there. But so I hope that, these terms are helpful for you to understand and to help you to start to think critically about things like food insecurity and food justice. So with my passion for food justice and community and advocacy, and as a dietitian, I never really felt that I could merge the two. And what I mean by that is my food justice advocacy was always in the community. And my role as a dietitian was sort of separate from the two. And that's why I say I'm a food justice advocate and I'm a dietitian, because for a long time, I didn't feel that I could merge the two. I didn't feel like there was enough of a space or a willingness for people to have these conversations, even a year ago. But with everything happening around in the summer and a greater attention on Black Lives Matter and racism, I decided that I wanted to provide a resource and a tool to help dietitians and other nutrition professionals, because I recognize how oppressive dietetics can be, as well as the food system and the healthcare system. So that led me to create this course called CDER. And CDER stands for Culture, Equity, Diversity, and Race in Dietetics. And it's a self-study course that focuses on anti-oppression and anti-racism, as well as cultural competency for nutrition professionals. So one way that I'm building community is engaging other professionals, so my peers, in these conversations. Because there wasn't a resource available. So even if you really wanted to learn more, it was kind of a challenge. So I felt that with my lived experiences, my experience in the community, as well as professional experiences, I could provide this resource to not only help dietitians, but also to help those that they serve. And really, I'm really just proud of what we've been able to accomplish. So I've been running it for a couple of months now, and it's just great to actually have these conversations and look and find support within with other nutrition professionals. So I just wanted to share quickly one thing that was said by a student. They said that the CEDAR course provided me with a great place to start in anti-racism work as a dietitian. I went into the course feeling overwhelmed, knowing that I needed to be doing something, but not even knowing where to start. I've come away from the course with an increased understanding, desire, and awareness that I need to learn more, as well as confidence in where I can start working now. And I have the knowledge of tools and resources that I can continue to use to learn and grow in this area. So one thing that I really want to take away from this piece is that often people don't take action because they feel like they don't know where to start. And when it comes to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice, doing nothing is an issue. And it's more important to take daily actions and recognize that you might make mistakes and things aren't perfect. But as you continue to go, you will learn and get better. So I'm just really proud of building community in that way. So I definitely want to leave you with some actions. So what are things that you can do? Like I mentioned before, really diversify your leadership. Who are in positions of power and how can things change? And I also want to emphasize the importance of not tokenizing. So not just putting people in positions just because, but actually being intentional and making decisions meaningful. I think another great thing is to engage in more interprofessional conversations. So have conversations with other people. Engage the communities that you're served. So get to know what's going on in your neighborhood. Another piece is self-reflection. So doing that critical self-reflection work is very key in this work as well. And then lastly, continue to educate yourself because what you don't know, you can learn, and there's always an opportunity to do that learning. So I just want to thank you for having me here today to share more about reframing diversity as well as building community. So here are a few ways to stay connected. I do have that course available. If you're interested, I'd be happy to talk more about that. I do share a lot of things on Instagram and other social media, and you can always send me an email. So I appreciate you letting me share this with you today.
Rosie, thank you so very, very much for giving us some real actions to take away and also how we can stay connected with you, because I know a lot of people, including myself, definitely want to do that. Some of the things that you talked about that made me really reflect is the notion of agency and action. And that you're right, when we're talking about historic, systemic, it can seem so much bigger than us. But the message of your story is the wrong thing to do is nothing. It all starts with that first step. And I was actually thinking of Gandhi, the quote that everyone knows, which is, you be the change that you want to see in the world. So when we see our world of systems that we think aren't as inclusive as we would like them to be, how can we find our unique way to make change and bring community? And I was really struck by the ways that you aren't just talking about community, whether that is your online community, your Jane and Finch community, or your RD community, is you are an active participant. And so you are walking the walk and not just talking the talk. And that's so incredible to see. And I think a wonderful example for others who want to do the same. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your perspectives and your candidness and your openness about your experiences and why you wanted to bring change, and also for sharing your student quote, because it's very inspiring that their outcomes are there, not just the ideology. So thank you so very much for joining us. And one lucky group will have you in their networking session and can ask you a lot more questions. And I really couldn't be happier that you came. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. We are going to shift now to Carolina and to Marissa M. And Carolina has some very unique things to share with us about the delivery of her portion of the program tonight. Carolina is a specialist with the Canadian National Institute for the Blind and Deaf. And so Carolina, I'm going to turn it over to you, and you can let us know how things will be a little different in your delivery because of the nature of communication that we're going to be having the pleasure to experience with you this evening. Over to you, Carolina. Oh, we can't hear you.
My apologies.
Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. So I'll be sharing my presentation. One moment, please. Okay. My buttons have disappeared, so if you bear with me a minute, it was working a minute ago. Technology. May I ask Joy to share my presentation? I'm really sorry about that.
Yep, no problem.
Are we good?
Yep, just opening it up.
Okay. Okay, fantastic. My apologies for that. Just as I had that. All right, well, good evening. Thank you for having me, and thank you for that introduction. I wanted to address that for the purposes of accessibility, I will be modifying the pace of my presentation just to ensure the intervener has time to relay the information behind the scenes. We're working with a person who is deafblind. I also wanted to share that this PowerPoint that you're viewing has been shared, and although it's not visible to your eyes once you receive this presentation, it has really been adapted for screen reader users, which I would be happy to share with you during our networking, how you can look at those adaptations. You'll also notice that there are some descriptions within each slide, and the interpreters, as soon as that slide came up, were describing what the first slide looks like as I speak. So once again, it's a pleasure to meet everyone. I have been hearing all these amazing stories. Thank you for inviting me. I'm really touched as an immigrant once myself a long, long time ago. I am so inspired by all the work that you do. As presented, my name is Carolina Cahoon, and I am the specialist for deafblind literacy at the Canadian National Institute for the Blind. known as Deafblind Community Services. So today I decided, I chose my audience. I realized that most of you are in the food industry. So I wish to share a story regarding past and current exciting collaborations between our department, and I'm sorry to put you on the spotlight, but each of you are my heroes, the Landon Intercommunity Health Center, Brescia College, and the Centertown Community Health Center in Ottawa. Because I thought to recognize it, because each of these organizations have created such an important impact in the deafblind community as we work together to increase food literacy with accessible resources and programming. I will be also interviewing a guest speaker, Marisa Marquez, later on. Marisa is a member from the deafblind community who will be teaching you some fun food science and speak about her communication methods. So when we heard about the topic of the conference, I cannot tell you how honored we were that you thought of us. That title on the speaker series, Reframing Diversity and Renewing Community, really encompasses what we do in our classrooms as we design programs with accessibility, which mandates to ensure everyone can understand, everybody can engage, everybody can perceive, interact, and navigate in any environment within their abilities, and with the variability aspect of universal design. By variability, I mean is because we eliminate barriers to learning as we create engaging and flexible resources so that everyone can access, demonstrate, and engage in ways that are meaningful to them. Next slide, please. So you can see here pictures of adaptations, a quick checklist to access the diabetes food guide. So in the first picture is a food guide checklist in Braille. The second picture is a list with options to use a dry erase marker or tactile markers. And the third is a colorful pie chart for visual learners with tactile markers. There are other ways to share the same information. We can do that. We can share some spreadsheets over email or create, for example, an American Sign Language and English video explaining how to do a daily checklist. We occasionally offer PDF files as well because they can be made accessible. However, we are really mindful of the fact that not everyone knows how to open these files. And this is something that we have seen across the board, and we have been educating other organizations because not everybody has the digital skills to open a PDF file. When we share videos, it is also helpful for members from the sight loss community and the blind community to provide a descriptive link. For example, we'll give you an example. It is easier to read link to food labels rather than the screen reader coming back and reading https://www.foodlabels.com. That's just an example because it will read exactly as it is on the screen. So our end goal is not only to facilitate access, but really promote lifelong learning. Many learners come from diverse backgrounds and possess diverse communication needs. Some have had, for example, some traumatic experiences, and they often have educational struggles that were rooted due to undiagnosed learning disabilities. Some are fearful of how they may be viewed, wondering whether they are valued. And some are hesitant to share the fact that they don't understand certain concepts due to the stigma behind it. As a result, it's not uncommon to see some learners that really don't seek help or may not understand the role of a specialist. In this case, for example, since I'm talking to you as the audience, many don't understand what the role of a dietitian is. And most training and webinars, small groups, are usually designed to be a one-size-fits-all solution. We realize sometimes that there are training budget constraints and sometimes a little bit of understanding regarding the diverse populations and how they learn. So this has resulted in training design for just the average population, which has been a little bit exclusive because many of our learners are not feeling that all the resources are accessible to them or any of the training is accessible to them. However, many of you have changed that. Our collaborations with dietitians and the future graduates help deafblind and blind clients really overcome many obstacles related to food literacy, as we have created together very engaging and accessible resources so that everyone can equally participate. Because of this, we were able to diminish barriers to obtain, to process, and to ensure we understand the basic health information and services, which led to positive outcomes like lower blood pressure, healthy weight loss, and some have even started exploring new recipes. Like we have so many learners that were eating the same thing almost every day, and many of you have changed that. Next slide, please. So here's a picture of tools and food at one of the Healthy Series events. So the story I want to tell you began in 2018 with one referral as a client with diabetes needed support. So the dietitian who worked with this client is really a teacher at heart. From there we began a series of workshops and monthly visits to ensure that food literacy could promote positive change in attitudes and those attitudes and perceptions towards food. We wanted to ensure that learners could understand food labels and ingredients, and we wanted to ensure we could remove some common misconceptions and some assumptions towards food, and also decrease some food waste. So we started delivering cooking workshops combined with the expertise of dietitians, CNIB independent living specialists who supported training in kitchen safety, assistive technology specialists as clients learn to use Google Calendar as a method to create food journals, and students from the nutrition program at Pressure, some of whom created a facilitator guide to deliver cooking webinars. We also combined the expertise from a specialist from the London Intercommunity Health Center and the Centertown Community Health Center in Ottawa, and the transcribers from CNIB to create a Braille version of the Canadian Diabetes Food Guide. I received an email back in September 2008 of one of the first people who actually got a copy of that Braille Canadian Food Guide, and he was so excited and looking forward to taking that research home and use it. Next slide. So you can see here a picture of one of our Zoom webinars. So 5 videos on the screen, the interpreter, the kitchen where one of the speakers is cooking, a camera showing the food being prepared. There's an X there on the board, a nutrition student delivering a class, and one learner asking a question who is camera shy. And you can see here that we actually limit the number of videos on Spotlight due to accessibility purposes. So the moderators behind it, we turn to manage turn taking to ensure we can spotlight anyone communicating. And we tend to keep to no more than 6 videos at the same time. So the students from the nutrition program at Brescia continue assisting us with the delivery of these weekly webinars. We began these webinars a few months ago, and right now we were able to open them to clients who live across Ontario. How exciting is that? So it is our hope to continue bringing food literacy to more communities that we were not able to reach before. So I have to tell you that while this pandemic has created chaos, we feel extremely blessed that with the supports of numerous specialists, the deafblind community can continue receiving such vital information through a very accessible platform in which everyone can equally participate. It's like Yvonne said, everybody can dance and is invited to the party, and they're able to participate in their preferred communication method. We were able to create a relaxed environment in which terms such as 5%, 15%, or any of those other numbers, numbers and names of sugar, for example, or the name of salt are no longer overwhelming, but has become a way of life. Next slide, please. Just wanted to share a client's testimonial. That's a picture of a client testimonial, sharing what she learned and in one of the classes. I love the fact she says, I set an alarm on the iPhone to remind me to eat and stay well. I will try put some healthy food in my small lunch bag for me to eat when I need. I don't want to pass out in front of people. I am so happy that I have cooking class. It is worth for me and you too. Try come to the cooking class and learn something new. Maybe it will save your life. So on behalf of DBCS, I wish to thank each of these organizations I mentioned. Thank you, Lando Intercommunity Health Center. Thank you to the Centertown Community Health Center in Ottawa, and thank you, Brescia. We really are looking forward to continue smashing food literacy barriers and promoting health improvement and social and education equity. So thank you. I will now introduce Marisa. Next slide, please. So Marisa is currently on the line working with an intervener right now. I have on the slide a picture of Marisa and an intervener measuring oatmeal at one of the cooking classes.
So glad that you can hear me now. Thank you everyone for participating in the networking sessions. It was short, but hopefully very, very meaningful. I know our groups was, there is truly never enough time. I want to move tonight now on to the draw and prizes. I'm going to turn it over to Rebecca Hartley, and I will let her tell you who the lucky winners are for this evening.
Hi, everyone. So first we're going to draw for a cookbook. So this one's called Gather Around the Table. It's recipes for meals to share. So hopefully things are improving and we can all get together and you guys can make something out of it. And I'm just pulling up the random number generator. So our first winner, Peggy, I might need you to
stop screen sharing.
Yeah, I think so, so that I can see everybody present. Thank you very much. There we go. Perfect. So our first winner is Jason Eaton.
Yay, congratulations, Jason.
Perfect. So I will be in touch. I'll send you an email and let you know that we'll be sending that to you by mail and get your details then. So the next one is going to be the Indigo gift casket, which was provided by Kathy Onright. It's got a shopping list. It's got a beautiful coin purse and one of those handheld bags that you see at Indigo all the time. There's blue decorative napkins. There's a notebook. There's an instructive book if you like to get a little bit artistic, and it's got some handwriting tips. So I'm just going to draw for that one now. And the winner of that one is Marg Torrance. So congratulations to both of you. I will also be sending you an email soon, so just keep looking at your inbox for that.
Okay, okay, fantastic. Well, congratulations to the lucky winners. We hope you really enjoy your prizes. And the night is not over yet. I'm going to share my screen again. I'm the overeager screen share. I keep trying to keep it going. I wanted to also just give a few more announcements before we close tonight. And the first is you can reframe your role as a PHEC. For members, there are some open board positions, president-elect, the chair, the VP professional development, and member at large. And there's an email address there to get a hold of us if you're interested in becoming a board member. And Eileen can send out an email to everyone here so that we're sure we all have this information. So reconsider reframing your role with the OHEA. Join us next session, April 6th. We are looking at eco-housing in a new light, and we have some fantastic speakers that help make green living in our homes very accessible and affordable, and they have a lot of incredible tips. So please join us and register for that. Want to thank our amazing sponsors again, without whom that tonight would not have been possible: Canadian Beef, Egg Farmers of Ontario, and the Canadian Produce Marketing Association. Thank you very, very, very much, sponsors. Also, thank you very much to Brescia's Shea Association. So they had the virtual sponsor, or they hosted us virtually tonight. And we want to just leave off with thanking you very, very much, Yvonne, for bringing us the so much hope with what's happening as we welcome new Canadians, but also reminding us that there's so much more to do and to keep reaching and bringing change. And thank you very much, Rosie, for your insight into what's happening in food justice and all the things that we need to familiarize ourselves with as home economists on that topic, and to continue to follow you and all of the things that you are doing that we can join you in to achieve our shared purposes. And Carolina and Sarah and Marissa, thank you so very much for letting us know that there's things happening in the world that some of us maybe didn't even think of. But now that we know that it is happening, we're so much more uplifted. And certainly, hopefully, we did reframe diversity tonight, and that we do feel renewed, not only in our home economics community, but renewed in a community of our human family. So we want to thank you all very, very much. And we hope to see you again next time. And we wish you all a very lovely evening. And thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.